Good morning. It's day 28. Pearl's over here making biscuits. Maybe she'll come over and visit. Okay. Page 210. I don't remember what was happening. Oh, okay. Moses just had a bunch of private meetings with Dodi, and that is the guy who I can't remember. Okay, Dodi, who are you? What did you do? Certainly some political figure. Maybe I'll remember. Okay, so he just had a meeting with Dodi, and he basically had convinced him somehow to allow the road to get built, but Dodi's gonna get kind of rich off of it because he's gonna snag some of the real estate nearby, which he's gonna later be able to sell for a profit. So it's like dirty politics, but it's happening. So that's what just happened. All right, page 210. Dodi's friendship was to give Moses his first real hold on Jones Beach. After the meetings between the two men, the Republican boss told Moses to resubmit with some minor revisions the proposal so soundly defeated in the November 1925 referendum. Moses did so in November 1926, and the 3-1 margin against the proposal magically became a 3-1 margin in favor. That's crazy. So Dodi is just like the boss. Okay. Hempstead town voting 18,872 to 5,076 to cede the Long Island Park Commission all right, title, interest, and jurisdiction to all that certain town land, commonly known as Jones Beach. More importantly, the friendship altered the balance of power in the overall state park fight. On December 21, 1925, 10 days after Moses agreed to cooperate with McWhinney and the Hempstead Town delegation, the Suffolk County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution asking the legislature to abolish the Long Island Park Commission. Wait a second. They sent it to the Nassau Board of Supervisors, expecting that body to concur in the request, as it had a year before. To the shock of the Suffolk officials, Nassau declined to do so. The two counties in which the Park Commission was operating were no longer united in opposing it. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So Nassau County is like, yeah, Robert Moses is fine. Suffolk County is like, no, we still don't like him. The GOP front in Albany was no longer solid either because of the votes Dodi controlled in the Senate and Assembly. Republican ranks were already under severe pressure over parks. In New York City, Al Smith, taking command of Tammany Hall, in fact, if not in title after Charlie Murphy's death, had snatched the Democratic mayoral nomination away from Red Mike Highland and handed it to Jimmy Walker, and Walker, at his inauguration on January 1st, 1926, had announced support of the vast program of city parkland acquisitions prepared by the city's Parks Association with Moses' help. Okay, so he's the mayor. Jimmy Walker is the mayor. There would be a referendum in November to authorize the necessary bonds and women's clubs, and a reformers committee of 1,000 had already launched a mammoth public education campaign. All in all, 1926 was not the year to be opposing parks. Upstate Republican legislators might be insulated in their rotten boroughs, but it wasn't only I have a hiccup, sorry. I need to have a sip of water. Oh. Upstate Republican legislators might be insulated in their rotten boroughs, but it wasn't only legislators whose names would be on the ballot in 1926. Al Smith would be campaigning for re-election, and Republican strategists were determined to knock him out of the governorship. They had already persuaded the man they regarded as their strongest candidate, Ogden Livingston Mills, to leave Congress and run against him. And there was a U.S. Senate seat up for grabs too, and the present occupant of the seat was James J. Wadsworth himself, the former Assembly Speaker and one of the state's most powerful Republicans. No sooner had the legislature convened, therefore, than Wadsworth summoned the legislative leaders to an Albany hotel suite and told them a compromise on the park fight was in order. The compromise could not be over the Northern State Parkway, he said. The interests of too many of their friends were involved there. But the Taylor estate was a different story. Havemeyer, the only timber pointer with real influence, didn't seem really interested. Macy did, but Macy had little influence of his own. The Taylor estate, the Republican leaders agreed, could be sacrificed. Smith. Oh, hello, Spencer. How are you? Yeah, I really think the names in here, like for all of the like press, and veneration that this book has, I feel like people have not really made a shrine. Sorry, I don't know why everyone's honking today. I feel like people do not appreciate like how ridiculous the names are. Also, Red Mike Highland, I put on my to-do list like weeks ago that I wanted to make the Wikipedia article about Red Mike Highland better because it didn't even include Red Mike as his nickname. I think it was just like Michael Highland or something. But yeah, I just can't get over the names that I'm reading. They sound so fake. Smith, with his park plans stalled and the threat of the potentially embarrassing Taylor estate court fight hanging over him in an election year, was not averse to compromise. In a secret meeting with Hewitt and Hutchinson, and I don't know who Hewitt and Hutchinson are. Maybe they've been mentioned. The governor agreed that he would not ask for funds to acquire right-of-way for the Northern State Parkway until Moses came up with a route acceptable to the barons. And he agreed that even after the right-of-way had been acquired, he would not ask for funds to begin construction until the Southern State Parkway had reached the point at which it would connect with the Jones Beach Causeway, a point about 15 miles into Nassau County. Okay. In return, Hewitt and Hutchinson agreed that the Southern State Parkway could be built and that the entire $15 million proceeds of the park referendum would be segregated in 1926. Work could therefore begin immediately on Moses's Upstate Park program and his Long Island projects, including Jones Beach, soon to be the causeway leading to it from the Southern State Parkway, and Deer Range, soon to be August Heckscher State Park. And Heckscher is a big character that we've talked about before, but I think he was a baron, and I can't remember. This book really makes me feel like I have memory problems just because of all the all like the minor characters whose names are hard to remember. Since the 1925 Taylor estate fight had revolved around the question of whether an outside agency, the Republican-controlled State Land Board, should have authority over the State Parks Council, a face-saving device had to be worked out on that point so that it would appear that neither side had surrendered. I don't understand why they would have to save face. I think it's fine to surrender sometimes, but on January 26, 1926, Smith and the GOP legislative leaders announced that they had agreed that expenditures of the $15 million would be supervised, as the GOP had insisted, but as Smith had insisted, not by the land board, because the land board is the barons. Instead, it was announced expenditures would be supervised by a committee of 3: Smith, Hewitt, and Hutchinson. I want to remember who Hewitt and Hutchinson are. Macy, remember, is not a baron, but he's friends with the barons, and he's always fighting against Robert Moses. Macy got his first hint of what was happening when he learned that the segregations of the $15 million included an item of $25,000 for Deer Range Park, a permanent improvement of buildings, and $170,000 to begin the purchase of right-of-way for the Southern State Parkway. That strip of concrete Macy had always been afraid would reach out toward East Islip. Rushing to Albany, he confronted Hutchinson, and the assemblyman answered his questions evasively. The amateur in politics realized that the professionals had betrayed him. I'm not quite sure what was betrayed, but we'll see. Hewitt and Hutchinson had been pleased with the compromise with Smith. By postponing work on the Northern State Parkway until 15 miles of the Southern State were built, they thought that they were consigning the former road to some far distant limbo. The construction of the 15-mile-long Bronx River Parkway, after all, had taken 14 years. Okay, that's interesting. And since they could outvote Smith 2-1 on the committee set up to supervise park expenditures, they assumed they could keep the pace of construction on the Southern State very slow. Economy, moreover, was as important to them as delay. Their upstate conservatism had been affronted by the thought of spending even $1 million on parks and parkways in a single section of the state. They could see that the actual amount involved would eventually be far higher than the $1 million, but they wanted to keep it down to the bare minimum that they felt was all the state could afford. Okay, I'm looking up Hewitt and Hutchinson. Hewitt and Hutchinson, the power broker. Nothing is coming up. Hewitt and Hutchinson are mentioned in the Wikipedia article about the Northern State Parkway. So let's see. Senator Charles Hewitt and Assemblyman Eberly Hutchinson, both the financial chairs for their respective congressional departments. And they are, let's see what party they are. It's kind of hard to see what parties they're from. I think that they're Republicans because that would make sense if they're opposing Al Smith and his park building. Okay, Charles Hewitt was an American businessman, banker, and politician from New York. He was the first politician to complete 30 years sitting in the New York State Senate. His Wikipedia article is like painfully incomplete, so if anyone feels like beefing up an article. Same thing with Eberly Hutchinson, very short little stub article, but he was an American civil engineer and politician from New York. Okay, so I guess these guys, all that matters is that they're politicians that are Republicans who oppose the Parkway. I don't think there's that much more to know. All right. The sounds are immersive. Yeah, I agree. I would really enjoy, or if I were reading it online, like a Chrome extension that like adds a description, not a Chrome extension, but like a little, just like writing a script or something that would add like comma and then a very short description of every character that is getting mentioned on a page so that you remember. That would be nice. I would be into that. Okay, this is kind of random, but another like huge book that exists in the world is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And in the early days of Wikipedia, a lot of the first editors and contributors are people that knew Jimmy Wales and the other co-founder, Larry, from a philosophy forum on the early internet. And they were just like big Ayn Rand heads. And so like some of the very first Wikipedia articles are super in-depth articles about like minor characters in Atlas Shrugged, and all of them have since been deleted because it's like just like we don't have articles about minor characters for pretty much anything. But yeah, when you look at like the 2001 version of Wikipedia, there's just like so much Atlas Shrugged lore, kind of goofy. I don't know 1Q84. I'm gonna look it up. Oh, actually, now that I look it up, I'm like, I recognize this. I have not read it, but I hope it's good. I've definitely seen many people reading that. I don't know. Yeah, I really think this is like I can only do 1,000+ page book per year. So I think this is the only one. I did read I just bought the Robert Caro book called Working, it came out in 2019 and it's really short in comparison. Like it's 200 pages, but like short pages. Like these pages have so many words on them. I think those pages probably have like 60% of the text, and it's so fun. And he just talks about like how he works. And it's really, I mean, it's obvious, but like he is truly so thorough. So that was fun. I read like so much of it last night and it felt kind of refreshing to be like, wow, I'm like learning about the power broker, but I'm actually like, turning pages more frequently than once every 7 minutes or whatever. Okay, I should probably keep reading this. A fun little Hewitt and Hutchinson aside there. Sounds like they don't really matter, but at least I checked. No sooner had they given Moses $170,000 for Southern State right-of-way, confident that the amount would allow him to purchase no more than a mile or two, than the Nassau County Board of Supervisors, now suddenly and mysteriously enthusiastic over Moses's projects, purchased additional miles and presented them to the Long Island Park Commission as a gift. That is so interesting. Playing on the greed of real estate developers who owned land in the parkway's path, Moses persuaded them to donate right-of-way so that the rest of the property could be opened to development. Suddenly awakened to the fact that the New York City watershed property could be used as right-of-way, Hewitt and Hutchinson realized with a shock that the land for the Southern State was almost all in Moses's hands, all the way out to that magic point where it would trigger the start of work on the Northern State. Okay, I feel like I have like a 70% grasp of the plan here, but basically he needs to have all the land before he can even do one of the highways, but there's supposed to be two. Although no funds had been appropriated for surveying and engineering, there were suddenly surveyors and engineers out on the right-of-way. Men furnished by the State Department of Public Works, whose Long Island office just happened to be located at the former August Belmont estate near Babylon that Moses had acquired and turned into a state park, making the old Belmont mansion his headquarters. And these men, they were told, were drawing up plans with unprecedented speed. Even as they digested this news, a bill was introduced in the legislature providing $1 million for the construction, reconstruction, and widening of highway routes in Nassau and Erie counties, including $350,000 for construction of the Southern State Parkway. They had no trouble understanding why Erie, a Republican stronghold, had been given even more money than Nassau in the bill. Erie's legislators would be even more determined than Nassau's that the bill should pass, and an alliance of the GOP legislators from these two counties with the Democrats could make it impossible for Hewitt and Hutchinson to prevent its passage. This is some crazy honking. I don't know what's going on. I live right by a daycare, like it's across the street, and so when the daycare gets the daycare schedule kind of informs the traffic right outside on this corner. But this isn't daycare traffic. I don't know. The parks on Long Island were also being developed at a rate they could hardly believe, since they had kept appropriations for such development small. When they checked, they found that park roads were being constructed by DPW, Department of Public Works, crews, and park buildings refurbished by Conservation Department crews. They took a look at the bills. Truby Davison, another name that's pretty interesting. The bills that Truby Davison had introduced for Moses in 1924, and found in them a specific provision stating that while the Long Island Park Commission would have final say on the design of parkways, as well as full control of them when completed, their physical construction could be financed out of DPW allocations. And when it says being financed out of the Department of Public Works allocations, maybe I'm dumb. I don't really know if that means it's financed from the Department of Public Works or if it's like out of, like, you're getting an outside source out. I don't know. Well, so I hope that we clear that up. Okay. They found that the landscaping was being financed out of routine 1926 Conservation Department requests for tree nurseries. The Lloyd Neck Lighthouse property was being developed with a Conservation Department appropriation for oyster culture. When they waxed indignant, they were told blandly that the lighthouse property would certainly be used for oyster culture. There was nothing the slightest bit illegal about anything Moses was doing. The best bill drafter in Albany, they realized, had been at work again. Okay, now I see. So it's money that's different from the Department of Public Works that is funding the parks. And when they protested to the governor, he bourbon-coated the pill he was making them swallow. I'm going to start using that in my day-to-day life, I think. Inviting them to see for themselves what Moses was doing, the governor suggested they come to New York City first, sleep over at the Biltmore, and then go to Long Island in the morning. At the Biltmore, as Moses would later recall, the governor got Hewitt and Hutchinson to stay overnight in his apartment. They were drinking bozos, and they were really putting it away. As the evening wore on, the governor put some records on, and he was teaching these two fellows to dance. I left at 2 a.m. Henry Lutz, who is a Moses aide, stayed until 5, and he told me that it was about then that the governor and he and Hewitt put Hewitt and Hutchinson to bed. This is all a quote from Robert Moses. Hewitt got up at 7 the next morning and ordered a big breakfast for himself and the governor, and they went in to ask Hutchinson what he wanted, and Hutchinson sort of groaned, lying there in bed, and said, "Governor, go away. The stomach revolts at the thought of food." During the tour, and that's the end of the quote. During the tour, Smith was at his friendliest. You see, Moses would say, in so many cases, things come down to personalities, to the human factor, and they loved the governor. And even if they hadn't, what, after all, could they do? The Highway and Conservation Department budgets had already been approved. Money was being spent under them. If they tried to reopen the budgets, it would be a mess. And what would the press say? After all, there was the election coming. They decided not to interfere with the program. The court fight still loomed ahead of Moses, but Smith was able to help him with that too. During 1926, Moses continued his technique of stalling the trial while talking as though there were not the slightest doubt about its outcome. Okay, this is crazy that we're still even doing this. I feel like this court battle has been continuing for ages, but I'm like quite certain that the court thing we're talking about is where people think that Moses broke the law when he like took some of the barons' estates, and Moses thinks it was legal. And that happened like years ago, but he's been in court a bunch for it. For like so many pages of this book, we've talked about this court battle, and we're back. During 1926, Moses continued his technique of stalling the trial while talking as though there was not the slightest doubt about its outcome. In an article he wrote in May outlining the overall progress of the state park plan, he said blandly, "The state has acquired Deer Range Park." All through May, Moses' attorneys continued filing motions, and when judges overruled the motions, appealing their decisions to higher courts, and when the higher courts threw out the appeals, taking them to still higher courts. 3 separate dates were on set for trial, and on each of them, appeals were still pending, and judges had to grant the commission postponements. All through May, Moses's laborers were converting the ballroom of the old Taylor mansion into a cafeteria, the sitting room into a comfort station, setting up tents on the beach to serve as bathhouses, and hacking rough roads through the woods so that motorists could reach them. By mid-May, Deer Range State Park was opened to the public. Exciting. On May 25, State Supreme Court Justice Selah B. Strong received word from Albany that the state's highest court, the Court of Appeals, had thrown out the last of Moses's appeals in a decision which supported every one of Macy's contentions, even to the point of saying that if the commission's right to peremptory appropriation was upheld, the conclusion logically follows that it has a charter wide as the wind, withal, and might seize for park purposes all the lands in Nassau and Suffolk counties. Scheduling the trial for June 4, Justice Strong told Walter H. Pollock, who was heading the team of 5 attorneys handling the case for the commission, that he would not postpone it again for any reason. Walter H. Pollock. I think I'm going to read like one more page. Okay, also, I can't tell if Pollock is the attorney for which side. I'm sure we'll figure it out. On June 4, Pollock was not in court. One of his 4 colleagues told Strong, and Strong is the judge, falsely that Pollock was occupied in another courtroom. Strong said the trial was going on anyway. "We will not participate," Pollock's colleague said, and all 4 commission attorneys walked out of the courtroom, leaving the commission without counsel. I just realized the fact that the judge is named Justice Strong. That's like the best name for being named Strong is so awesome for many careers, but especially for when you're a judge. Strong adjourned the trial for a day to give Pollock a chance to appear. On the next day, Pollock and his colleagues were absent again. Strong adjourned it again, and again no attorneys appeared. On the 4th day, the judge allowed a jury to be chosen and told Macy's attorney, Charles H. Tuttle, to present his case. The jury found that both appropriations of the Taylor estate had been illegal. The first, because the commission did not possess $250,000. The second, because while it had the money came from a private gift instead of legislative segregation, the only legal source of funds for a peremptory appropriation. The jury assessed each of the 3 commissioners, Robert Moses, Townsend Scudder, and Clifford Jackson. I don't know. We don't know those other guys, do we? The jury assessed each of them $22,000 apiece in punitive damages. Strong perpetually enjoined the commission from entering the Taylor estate and ordered the state troopers removed forthwith. Watching the judge sign the injunction and hand it to the Suffolk County Sheriff, watching the sheriff leave the courtroom to serve the injunction on the troopers, Macy thought he had won at last. Declared Tuttle, the vindication is now complete. I just got a little preview of the next paragraph, and you are not even going to guess which characters are coming back. Bella and Emmanuel Moses, his parents, who we haven't even talked about since I was just a young little girl reading chapter 1. Bella and Emmanuel Moses were at their summer lodge at Camp Madison. Every morning, a Madison House social worker delivered a New York Times to their door. When he handed it to them on the morning after the verdict and they leafed through it, all the trial stories were on inside pages now. And learned of the $22,000 judgment against their son, they groaned, and Bella Moses said, quote, "Oh, he never earned $1 in his life, and now we'll have to pay this." The social worker recalls, "It was just assumed that they would pay it. They always paid all his debts." long. I'll do one more paragraph because it's fun. The day after the verdict, Pollock, suddenly free of other court engagements, appealed on the grounds that the Long Island State Park Commission had not been represented by counsel. A Brooklyn Supreme Court justice denied the appeal, calling the lack of representation a deliberate and intentional attempt to delay the proceedings. But the appellate division agreed to hear the appeal. Also, I've been saying appellate, but my boyfriend told me recently that it's appellate. But I just thought appellate sounded right. I don't know. Let me know if you have feelings. But the appellate division agreed to hear the appeal at its fall term and invalidated Strong's injunction until then. Okay, I can't believe, see, every time I have this feeling a lot when I read about legal proceedings, but sometimes things will happen and I'll just be like, I didn't even know that was allowed. Like, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, I didn't know that an appellate or appellate court could agree to hear an appeal and then just like render the previous decision completely, it no longer does that stand. But then there's no new rule because we haven't heard it yet. It's like, that's not really intuitive. I didn't even know that was allowed. Okay. All right. The troopers returned to the property, and during the summer, Moses took reporters on trips to Deer Range Park, and the reporters rhapsodized about the families enjoying its facilities. In the fall, the appellate division, I hope you like that, Spencer, upheld Pollock's appeal and ordered a new trial. And this trial, which was to be the closest thing to a legal showdown that was to occur in the case, was to contain a new factor: Al Smith's appearance as a witness for Moses. Smith's appearance marked the first time in a generation, probably longer, that a chief executive of the state has appeared in court in the role of a witness. Platoons of reporters followed the governor as he, Moses, and Mrs. Moskowitz boarded a Long Island Railroad train for the 3-hour trip to Riverhead. At the station, he was met by an American Legion band, which played The Sidewalks of New York, which is like the Al Smith song, as it accompanied him to the courthouse. I kind of want to like play that, but I don't really have my phone. Whatever. I wonder if I play it from my computer, The Sidewalks of New York. I wonder if I play it, if you'll be able to hear it. I don't really know. Oh, first. That's so annoying. I turned off ad block like 2 days ago just so that I could see which ads came up when I made certain Google searches. And it's like the worst decision ever. I need to turn it back on, otherwise I'll die. Okay, this is The Sidewalks of New York. I don't know if you can hear it. If you can't hear it, I'll just tell you it sounds really old. So this is what they're playing. There, he was escorted to the chambers of Justice James A. Dunn. Justice Dunn and Justice Strong. This sounds like a joke. Okay, the governor talked with Dunn in private, and then the judge escorted him into the courtroom so that he could give his testimony. He was on the stand for only 15 minutes and spent most of the time recounting the Biltmore hearing and was not cross-examined. And as soon as he stepped off the stand, the judge adjourned the court. The governor joined him in his chambers for lunch. Okay, I'm done listening to the song. Too many words. In the newspapers, Smith's appearance dwarfed the legal issues involved in the trial. Whether it had the same effect in the mind of Justice Dunn is unknown, which is unfortunate because the judge, not the jury, decided the case, and his directions to the jury, which precluded it from making a decision on the essential point at issue, were rather sharply at variance with those of the many other judges who had been involved with the case. Truly, so many other judges have been involved in this case. It's too many judges. Dunn directed the jury to find that the first appropriation of the Taylor estate had been illegal, but that the second had been legal and property therefore now belonged to the Long Island Park Commission. The only function of the jury, he told it, was to decide whether Paukagoo, and that's the company owned by one of the barons, whether Paukagoo had suffered substantial financial damages as a result of the first seizure. If it had not, he said, the jury should fix the damages against the commission at 6 cents. The jury did so. Macy was to believe, until he died, that Smith's entrance in the case had played a role in the judge's removal from the jury's hands of the right to make a decision on the key point in the case, the legality of the second appropriation. Quote, the governor came down and took the judge out to lunch. What chance did we have? He said. Okay, I keep saying I'm almost done, but it's so good. I'm gonna read like one more paragraph. Whether Dunn's decision would have remained the binding legal word in the case if both sides had continued the legal battle on equal terms, if both sides had continued to make use of all their remedies at law, if the Paukagoo Corporation had been able to press through higher courts its appeals as the Long Island Park Commission had been able to press its appeals, is impossible to determine, for both sides were not equal. Lawsuits take money. The state's supply of this commodity is comparatively bottomless. The private citizens is not, and now W. Kingsland Macy was running out of money. Macy himself was not wealthy. Havemeyer was, but saying, quote, this should be considered a business affair, as he had told Macy, he had told Macy he would have to pay all legal expenses over $25,000. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. That was fun. That was exciting. Lots of court showdowns. The most exciting court, and everyone was like parks, 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 and then at the last minute, all of the Republicans from Long Island like switched and were like anti-parks. That was the most exciting court showdown, I think. I'm excited for the highways to get built, though. In the book that I was reading called Working by Robert Caro, the first few chapters are about Robert Moses, and then the next ones later are about Lyndon B. Johnson. So I haven't gotten to those yet. But he was talking about how he spent 6 months talking to people who had been displaced by one of the highways. And there's going to be a chapter coming up called like 1 Mile, where he just talks about the people who had lived on the 1 mile of highway. And I'm really excited for that. That seems like it's going to be interesting. So, okay, goodbye. I hope you have a good rest of your day.